Oh my god, TikTok has really made it. Look at the news. So TikTok's US deal and how the app has really avoided a ban. This is what we're going to be discussing in today's episode. So make sure you smash the like button because it really helps grow the channel larger. So let's begin. So TikTok really avoided a US ban. What happened is that TikTok has finalized a deal to create a new US based entity, avoiding a nationwide ban. And if you can zoom in on the chart right here, so just look at this. So number of TikTok users worldwide from 2020 all the way into 2025, we can see that the number of users has almost doubled to reach around 1 billion users by 2025, according to this graph from statista.com. We can see in 2020 it was 460 million, 650 million, 750 million in 2022, and then after the coronavirus it just kept on rising, and we can see that it has reached 950 billion by Feb 2025. I believe by now it is more than 1 billion users for TikTok, and this is really phenomenal to see for the company. So if we kind of just zoom back, right, so really what happened is that TikTok's user base has surged from 450 billion to almost 950 billion, nearly 1 billion, making it one of the fastest growing social media platforms ever, far outpacing rivals in growth and speed, and especially when we compare that to Facebook back, I remember it was around 2010. Or 2008, sorry. So TikTok, so really the new company, this US company, is 80% held by the US, and 20% is still held by the Chinese company ByteDance. So really this US part, the 80%, is only operating for the US. So TikTok's other places like Canada, I believe, Europe, Middle East, and North Africa, all of that is still operated and all backed up by the ByteDance Chinese company, parent company. However, this only the US entity is now 80% US and ally owned. So Oracle is the major part here. We also have Silver Lake and MGX. MGX, I believe, is from United Arab Emirates, or basically Dubai. So basically this is really nice for the company, and I'm going to tell you how this would affect the stock in the future if it goes IPO, and the valuation of the company overall and the financials. It's long term and short term as well. So this ends a legal fight that began after Congress has really passed a forced sale law in 2024 that we all have seen just around 2 years ago. And now really Trump has delayed enforcement. This was at the beginning of 2025, and now has praised the deal as saving TikTok. And this was really phenomenal for the company because, having the US to back you up really means that the company is now more stable. So if you explore this, so ByteDance, or the Chinese parent company, was the control, and China linked the operation. However, really now what happened is the US-led board with Oracle mainly as oversight and US data handling. So US-led board and CEO will run TikTok's American operations only, and as we said, Oracle oversees the US recommendation algorithm and is trained on US user data only, and as compared to the Chinese parent company, which kind of controls all of the other places. So TikTok promises stronger data security for the US specifically and content safeguards. So this really leads to China keeping ownership of the core algorithm via licensing to Oracle and these other investors that we have really talked about. So if we go on to this, before I explore that, I'm going to show you here a very nice graph from statista.com. If you go for most popular social networks worldwide as of Feb 2025 by number of monthly active users. So if you really look at Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, these three first companies each have around 3 billion users, and this is really nice to see. So this Meta company is really holding the top 3 social media platforms, and as we can see, that is why if we really look at the stock over the past around 2 years, we can see that they have made more than 100% up. So that means more than double the stock price, and this is really nice to see in just 1 or 2 years. And then if we really go back to these other social platforms, we can see, because I lived in China for around 5 to 6 years, we can see that WeChat is also one of those companies, 1.4 billion, mostly Chinese people. And QQ, for example, is almost completely Chinese people or people living in China. When I was there, I was using WeChat. However, QQ, I kind of downloaded that by the end of the 5th year. However, it wasn't really that useful. Weibo is also essential in China as well. So This is really nice to see. Telegram has been also really going very fast. However, they reached 1 billion users according to this graph. And I don't know how this graph is kind of different. We can see TikTok has around 2 billion users, monthly active users. However, as we can see here in the data and graph that I showed you here, it was around 1 billion. So I don't know if you guys let me know what you guys think. Why is this discrepancy between 1 billion and 2 billion, although both are coming from the same reference, which is statista.com, and this was really kind of weird for me. So anyway, I'm going to go back to this. So TikTok versus other social media platforms, we can see that does the US deal actually help financials and valuations? This is what we're going to be exploring in just a moment. However, TikTok, around 1 billion users, were the fastest growth rate in social media history, and I had a graph for that, but I'm not showing it here. So Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are kind of having slower growth and higher saturation as compared to TikTok, which is kind of especially focusing on Gen Z and Gen Alpha, so within the last kind of 20 years, and this is kind of dominating the time spent per user on TikTok. This really leads to advertisers following attention, because attention means more social media platform money, because you're going to have more people watching these advertisements, and this leads to TikTok winning in this particular area. However, TikTok has an issue here, is that they have a key weakness with monetization. So the ARPU of TikTok remains well below Meta and Google. I forgot the exact numbers here, but it was really phenomenal to see. And then the ad infrastructure is less mature as compared to Facebook, which, Facebook is kind of a mature social media platform as compared to TikTok, and that's why they have these ad infrastructure is really mature as compared to TikTok, which is less mature. Commerce and creator monetization is still developing. Because it is still developing, this means that TikTok has really still a lot of growth potential in the future, and this would translate, if they go IPO or if they go public, this means that they still have a lot of potential for growth in the valuation and their profits and their revenues. However, this really still puts them at execution risk, a significant execution risk, which really is kind of a two-sorted way. If TikTok goes IPO, I personally would probably not be investing. However, I would still want to see the financials of the company, as would really be interesting for me. So if we go for the expansion effect on financials, for the short term, as I promised, so there is of course a lot of restructuring, ad and legal compliance costs, and this would drive kind of profits lower because you have more costs. So the revenue, all of that, what's coming, you're going to have to take more costs. This would lead to the profits down below to be lower as compared to prior. So there is no immediate revenue acceleration for this particular news. However, for the medium to long term, I believe that this would kind of stabilize their advertiser confidence, because just imagine you're the company that wants to do advertisements to kind of people from Gen Z or Gen Alpha within TikTok. However, if you are kind of like a US-based company, doing that would kind of be risky in one way or the other. That's why maybe you would be hesitant to go for that. However, what really happens is now, because they have this US branch, which is mainly controlled by Oracle, this means that these people or in these companies would be more interested in TikTok now, because they would see this as a more stable business, and this leads to a long-term brand and enterprise ad contracts, which would, in my personal opinion, protect the US growth and TikTok, which is TikTok's most valuable advertisement market. This would drive the profits in the future higher, or the revenues higher to be more specific, and this means that the stock, if it goes IPO, the prices would increase. However, now the question is, we all know that TikTok is not yet public, and this would improve ByteDance valuation stability. Would TikTok go ahead and go for an IPO? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. So because of their expansion, we know that this reduces geopolitical discount, and this would mean that the price and the valuations would be higher, and we all know any company that is operating within the US would inherently just have a higher share price valuations. And if we go for this graph right here, so the most used social media platform by marketers, specifically people doing marketing worldwide as of Jan 2025, we can see that Facebook, the people who are doing marketing 83% of them are using Facebook, 78% Instagram, and then LinkedIn is the third in place. We can see that TikTok is only around 25%. So this is like 1/4 of marketers worldwide are using TikTok. Now, with the presence of the US branch, I believe this number, 25%, is going to jump significantly. I don't know if it's going to reach 50 or 80%, just like Facebook. I don't believe in the short term. However, in the future, I believe TikTok, if they continue what they're doing here, I believe they have a very good chance of reaching more than 40% in my personal opinion. And this would lead to strengthening the IPO optionality in the future, and the deal would protect upside rather than creating an instant growth for the short term at the time being. So the bottom line is this deal is really great for the stock if it goes IPO. It is good for the company when it comes to profits in the long term or the medium term. However, in the short term, there is no much fluctuations in my personal opinion. Let me know if you guys like this type of content, and I would see you in our next episode.